not Sunday. It's Wednesday night. Man, I'm still not even used to this. But at least we've got, like, you know, snow on the ground and winter's starting to feel like winter again. I swear, that's like the most... Yes, dog. That's the weirdest part for me, is that for like a week it stopped being winter and it started feeling like spring. And I know we went over this with Punxsutawney Phil being an immortal weather controlling groundhog, but at least now it feels like winter. And I'm not sure how to reconcile that, because I was actually starting to get used to this idea of like, hey, you know what? If we have like a month and a half early spring, that's like more time for activities. And I'm not complaining, because it's beautiful out. Absolutely beautiful out. I go outside, everywhere I look, it looks fantastic. Cold, but fantastic.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, what my eyes felt like they were gonna freeze the other day, or like I think it was yesterday. I don't remember. It was
yeah,
just so brutal.
yeah,
Um,
definitely. Yeah, like I said, it looked cold outside. It was like when it looks cold, it's definitely cold, but it's gorgeous. It's this strange trade-off. You can't be outside for more than a few minutes before you're actually damaging your body. But it's absolutely gorgeous. It's like it's one of those few times where it's like, man, I could stand out here for a while. And then of course regret it, 10, 15 minutes later. Go back inside, and whatever heat the house was set on is enough to make you pass out. There's like a few minutes to shed everything before you start to overheat.
so I don't know how ubiquitous this experience was. Did they have the guy or one of the people who climbed Mount Everest and like lost his nose to frostbite come speak at your school?
No, but I remember watching a video when I was a Boy Scout doing wilderness survival, talking about the risks of exposure during, anything below freezing for any period of time.
Yeah, because that's like
That's why I'm like
I've
a
always
walking
respected the
PSA about
cold.
anybody being outside in like 20 degree or below weather. It's like, hey, you've got like, a good half hour before you have to go inside. Otherwise, it's dangerous. And if it's below zero, you got 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, that shit is no joke, but that's where the cold is. It's like some shit you can't get back. And that's where, even if it's feeling, like you may not lose the skin or you may not lose the appendage, but losing feeling is like the prospect of that from just being outside for too long is crazy. I mean,
Well, it's just like,
whew,
how we know that, soda with ice is kind of a joke because below 40 degrees, our taste buds don't really work. And it extends to our dermis. Like, once the temperature gets below a certain threshold, we can't feel cold anymore. We
mhm.
don't register that input as cold. It's just nothing. And that's when it's really dangerous, because once the cold penetrates beyond that layer and starts getting into like the core of tissue, all of a sudden weird things start happening. Like
Yeah, it starts to feel like burning.
our whole biological feedback system is all sorts of confused at that point. Our lungs do weird things when there's cold air. Our eyes don't behave right. Our ears start working wrong. Everything goes wackadoodle.
Mm.
Conversely, get too hot and all sorts of hallucinations happen too. So it's not like,
Yep.
we've got a really, really narrow window of actual optimal physical conditions or environmental conditions. Like, in the grand scale of things, we've got a really handy Celsius and Fahrenheit scale for temperature, but I'm obviously weird because I have my my Google temperature set to Kelvin because I think it's funny. And but also it reminds me that there's a scale that goes from like 0 all the way up to like whatever however high it goes. I think I've only ever read about Kelvin up into like 15,000 because beyond that I think it's like, or in that realm it's like beyond that it's like UV and stuff and things we can't see.
Yeah,
Oh, it goes to
radiation is
10,000.
fascinating.
Yeah, it goes to 10,000 and after that it's just like stuff that's beyond color temperature.
Um, I don't. Have you done infrared saunas?
Oh, not steam, but
Yeah,
like a thermal lamp,
yeah. Basically, it's um,
like hanging out inside of a giant easy bake oven.
yeah, basically, because it's like a dry sauna.
Yeah.
It's such a weird sensation when you know what's happening. It's hot, but when you're when like your molecules are heating up, it's like you're saying, it's like being in an oven or like a microwave. And I know there's been at least one sauna death, but that was from steam. But you are just basically like cooking yourself. So I think that's where it's like the body's super resilient. I mean, even okay, on that note, like smoking kind of to a degree is like cooking your lungs.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's not like the body is uh only experience cooking on this one front. But I think it's so
I mean, freeze drying is essentially uh, removing moisture from the body, which is kind of what smoking and cooking does.
right. And I mean and ultimately what I was getting at is like the the as you're alluding to, there are only so much extremes the body can go to without like shock setting in on one end or the other. And the issue becomes if you can safely push those limits to the point where it's like existing doesn't then become a detriment to your health. Because I think what ends up happening is like a lot of people aren't using the sauna or cryo correctly. And then what I think I don't when people call a cold, I don't think it's a misnomer in that what I've experienced is like in the same way that the oceans or large bodies of water take a lot of time to change their temperature. It's like you have surface blood and then you have inner blood. And I think this is what has been described in terms of chi. And the issue becomes if you don't control the temperature of your blood correctly, you can have oils that you eat at one temperature outside your body coagulate in your body at a different temperature because your blood is not the same throughout your body. And then that's how plaque deposits start to build up. And then the blood is not flowing properly. And then you start to get aneurysms. And it's like one thing leads to another, issue being vasodilation needs to be exercised like any other muscle. And in both directions, in that I want to say like the cryo, it like helps prevent like um migraines and fucking aneurysms and shit like that because it's like if you're
I know that for athletes or people who do physical engage in physical fitness and are really pushing their bodies, the ice bath has been like demonstrated time and time again to improve recovery times, and also to increase recovery rates. Like just for anything, even for people who haven't injured themselves.
well it definitely keeps swelling or it reduces inflammation. It doesn't keep swelling down. It
Yeah, you'd have to
if
stay in the
there's
ice bath.
well, it's like if there's any inflammation, cold can help reduce it. It doesn't completely remove sweat. Like I don't want to miss speak on how much benefit it can have, but that's where I think again, like the vasodilation is really like in both directions is and vasoconstriction is like
Oh yeah, I think that these things all have to be used in some kind of balance with each other because
right,
you can't you know, detune the whole system so much that it starts giving the wrong kind of feedback, and that goes back to exposure to cold. There's a point where diminishing returns kick in, and all of a sudden now you're in trouble. But for that first like
right.
5 minutes, you were actually doing some really interesting things to your body, like in a sense, gaming it into releasing a bunch of I can't remember the name of the it's like a group of endorphins that help us so that we don't like freak out because of cold. It's like a prevents muscle spasms. I can't remember now, but it goes away. It doesn't last forever, and then you start shivering, and that's when all hell breaks loose because now your muscles are firing rapidly to try and generate any kind of heat they can because the
Oh, I
blood.
wonder if it's cortisol.
Or there we go. That's what it is. But that's one of those things that like with extreme heat, even your body starts to sweat up into the point that you reach that wet bulb moment of you're sweating beyond the body's ability to cool itself, and it's just now retaining heat. And then all of a sudden, your brain is cooking in itself. And heat stroke or heat exhaustion, those things happen a lot faster to people than we realize. And then it's always cumulative. Like once it happens, it's easier every subsequent time it happens. It's with less exposure. And that's just on the hot end. Like on the cold end, most people get hypothermic, and unfortunately, a lot of those people, don't come back because hypothermia often precedes death. But not always. Some people end up in the hospital and survive, and sometimes hypothermia actually saves people who like you know fall into what appeared to be a frozen body of water, and then they were officially dead, but were able to be brought back. And that's I always thought that was like not a thing. I always thought it was like a tabloid thing. And then lo and behold, that kind of shit happens every winter because people are stupid enough to go walk out on a frozen body of water, and and I don't know what they're doing. They're like testing the ice.
Well, I think the issue becomes there have to be certain conditions for it to work. Like because there's like a lot of fish that and other um marine life that do it naturally during the winter, but for humans to do it, it can I don't think that there's a set limit on how long it can happen or how long it can last. The issue becomes if there's too much light and dark change, then they can start to get necrosis and the body can start to decompose. So it's like the issue is like it has to be completely frozen solid and it can't have any sort of exposure to like light or dark or like dark change. Um and it's like it has to be airtight, and then the temperature can't really fluctuate that much. And so this is where a lot of the cryogenic experiments ended up with people basically turning into mush because they
Yeah,
weren't like taking into account certain aspects of cryogenics. So it's like all these the times it happened was like effectively luck
yeah.
in that that's why they can't reproduce it in a lab reliably. Like I think they can do it up to a certain I want to say it's like 15 hours or something
Yeah, there's
Uh,
definitely some like, extenuating circumstances with every time a person has survived falling through the ice and then being revived, some period of time later after having like no activity in their no physical activity whatsoever, biological activity whatsoever. They're like just they refuse to call it, and then they have sinus rhythm, and lo and behold, the person's alive. And miraculously, weeks later, they come back, and they're never the same, but they're back. Because I don't think anybody can survive, an extended period of time without any oxygen in their brain. Like, there are definitely changes that occur. Like, if people experience like minor changes after surviving like fires, like building fires, then I'm pretty sure that nobody comes back from like being frozen like completely intact.
so nobody's actually come back from being frozen by man.
Okay,
By nature, I think this is
that's the
where,
distinction.
yeah, science has yet to cryogenically freeze a human being and bring them back to life.
So maybe there's like something really special about those people who've like checked out in the cold and then were brought back. Maybe
I think
there's
it must have been the same process that happens to the fish, and it must have activated. I mean, in that it all of the times where we're like, oh, we have the moth DNA or whatever down, it's like certain things are still active. We just don't know how to
we can't recognize it
take
or
advantage of it, or
yeah.
it's not even take advantage. It's not something that comes up, so it doesn't seem like it's active because we don't fucking end up at the bottom of a lake for months at a time. Like, because then it's like you'll see people will grow back tonsils or grow back um, nubs if they've lost toes or fingers, and it's like, yeah, those that DNA is still there, and it's like we just haven't figured out the right conditions to make it do what it does. It's in a lot of cases it's not junk DNA. It's just we don't understand how our DNA is expressing and how to like make it react. Or it, in that
we
the
like we should be able to
Lamarckian,
grow our arms back and our fingers and all that stuff, but
right.
most humans are like the gene for that kind of feature is turned off.
Well, and that's again, it's like is it appears to be turned off in that it's there, so it's not. It doesn't appear to be active. We just don't know how to
Take advantage of it.
stimulate it
Yeah.
in our situation because the issue is like it happens spontaneously in random people in that's where like it because it does happen in that like if you get your ears pierced your fucking skin grows back like and some you can get your ears pierced
Oh, there's some people
a
who have
certain
extra
point where they
fingers.
don't grow back, right, exactly. So it's like it it works to a certain degree. We can push it beyond its capacity to repair itself, but it still is active. It's just not as active as we want it to be. It's not as active as the iguana or as active as the lizard that can shed its tail and grow its tail back completely. So it's like
Man, with with
we
with
want it
like
to
the
be that active.
with the chemically active society that we have now, like I can only imagine the weird kind of extra arms people would have because they went out and drank too much, like the weekend before their annual hormone spike happened or something. It's like, oh,
I mean,
I signed up for the wings package, but I didn't get enough sleep and I spent too much time in the sun, so all I've got are these weird nubs.
well, and really, it feels like the more I exist, the more existence is like making sure your cells are able to reproduce and get rid of themselves in the proper amount of time and not to put your cells at risk to fuck that cycle up. So it's like, as long as I like take in enough calories and do enough movement to make it so that my cells are like replenishing, but also getting rid of themselves at the proper rate, I won't get cancer. I don't get, shouldn't get like a tumor, and I shouldn't like have some degenerative disease. The issue becomes if there is a degenerative disease that is like genetic, that's inevitable, that's when the shit starts to go out of whack. So it's more like some people have the genetic impediment and some people have the not keeping it in balance pediment. But ultimately, it's like as long as you're treating your cells correctly, like dying shouldn't really happen like for a very, very long time, ultimately. And I think the issue becomes like the older a person gets, the more difficult it becomes to keep the body um like spry and from like it takes a lot more work to keep from breaking things and from snapping things and to keep the temperature at the, it just becomes a lot more work to exist. And I think a lot of people tap out at a certain point, not because it's like, oh, they're weak or anything. It's just a whole lot of work to keep existing. And that's where I'm like, I've seen like older people when they tap out and it's like, oh shit. Once you tap out, it's just like a matter of a week or so. Like you can just sometimes it's like a couple of days and people are just gone. And so that's where I'm like, seeing it happen, I don't think Americans are encouraged to value their own life or any life enough to like just work on balancing those things versus I think one of the reasons I've been so attracted to like Taoism philosophy and like martial arts is because there's so much focus on balance that the the predisposition to try to like balance one's life, I think pushes one towards those philosophies. But then seeing how like those things are the basis of one culture versus in the other culture, I won't even say it's the exception. It's like not even on anyone's radar, let alone like the foundation of what society is like trying to do as a unit. So I think that's where I'm looking. It's like the funny thing about my understanding of Chinese martial arts is like it became so uncouth in the population. So like a lot of people don't even necessarily practice it, but the philosophies are still part of culture. So it's not like you can't just undo 5,000 years of philosophy. Like that's not how it works. So it's like in that people don't have to practice martial arts to have the philosophies that drive those martial arts be present in other parts of society. So it's like even at that, it's like it's not to say that Taoism or any sort of specific philosophy that's not like even Confucianism like is not ubiquitous in terms of people's beliefs. So I I'm not one of those people that homogenizes viewpoints in that it's super easy to be American and try to like establish a non-American viewpoint and be unnuanced about it. But I've already the issue becomes I know so like so much about China is like not being homogenous and being decentralized and having all these like nuanced provinces, and like even the notion of how like the specific sauces associated with specific provinces are what come through in like cuisine. That same nuance in the different provinces goes beyond just the cuisine, obviously. But I think
Yeah, they're like, I think something dumb like 700 specific regional vinegars. I don't know. When I was 25, we were doing this tour of the eastern seaboard of China, and I couldn't sleep one night. So I was watching these documentaries on one of the channels. It was in English, and it was the first one was about tofu. And they were like, every little town has its own variation of tofu. It's slightly different than its neighbors. And same thing with vinegar. There's just an incomprehensible diversity of vinegars and hot sauces and soy sauces and fish sauces and everything. They're all slight variations. And of course, here in America, we're going to get like what we've been informed is the top 100 out of probably thousands are available to us, and that's westernization of culture. You have to go there if you want to try everything on a super nuanced level.
yeah, for sure. And on that note, if
Now might
I'm
be the best
eating
time to go to China because of all the tensions. There's like an interest in this in the CCP of encouraging tourism and making sure tourists have the best time they can possibly have and see the best sightseeing stuff.
well, and on that note, like I realized in America, I always try to figure out like one of the most obvious signs that the food is good or at least representative is like if the people who it's supposed to be for are eating there. Like if it's Thai food and there's Thai people eating there, it's probably really good. If it's Chinese food and there's Chinese people eating there, it's probably really good. But another thing is like if you're eating at a Chinese restaurant and the menu is in like Chinese first, that's probably a sign your shit is going to be really good. And it's like I I've noticed like some of the menus are just straight up catered to Americans first, and then they'll have like the actual like for Chinese people menu in the back, and then sometimes it'll be like Chinese script first, and then it never has like an American menu, and some of the it's almost like the first dishes are like intentionally
Extra
exotic.
hardcore. Yeah.
Yeah, like it'll be like duck head soup or something, or like fish head soup, but like that's all you can see first, and you're like, hmm. And I think it scares off the
I mean, if you see if
vanilla
you see
mayonnaise people.
if you see chilled mala conch, order that shit.
Well,
That's
the place we ate was it's called Mala Project.
like seriously, if they've got like cold mala conch, then you definitely want to try that because it's amazing. Yeah, there's a lot of really pacified Chinese food that's okay, and then there's a bunch of exotic Chinese food that's like they should put a warning on some of it, like not all components of this dish are edible, kind of warning, like because sometimes there will be a big ass chunk of bone or a huge thing of like
Yeah.
some root that is used for flavor in the sauce, but you don't want to eat it because it tastes like it has like the texture of wood, like weird stuff. But man, that stuff can be so delicious. And despite China's huge physical presence on Earth, the Chinese diaspora is not quite so evenly distributed to the point that we can have that kind of stuff everywhere. I'm not sure that that's in the cards though. Like maybe everywhere but America.
Right. I mean, but I don't think Americans really deserve it. Like, these motherfuckers just want
I think 20%,
hamburgers
maybe 20 to
and French
30% of
fries.
America's population would deserves it.
Yeah, like 70% of Americans have the palate of a 5-year-old child, and it's not cute. Like, I'm there's certain things where I'm like, okay, I don't blame people for not knowing about them or not um having tried it. But then when they get the opportunity and then they don't try it, that's where I'm like, Americans are super disappointing in that, and they'll go abroad and eat at McDonald's instead of
Like,
finding a fucking local restaurant.
dude, like as an example, I was at a hibachi restaurant one time, and pretty much everyone at the table was getting their steak well done. And it's
Oh
one,
God.
yeah,
Oh God.
yeah. I wasn't sure
You
what to.
can't so you can't fault black people for doing that because there's like literal generational trauma with like not getting good meat. So black people, you can't hold them to the same, and it's not racist to do that. It's more so you got to understand when black people are like they don't trust the fucking meat. That's some generational trauma shit where
Yeah,
they don't trust the fucking meat.
it wasn't a table of black people.
Yeah. Well, that's like yeah, they don't get a pass then. And that's where I'm like, if a black person ever orders some meat well done or like a steak well done, I never judge them for that. But a white person, I do. I totally do. And it's like, again, it's like it's not even because black people will know the chart, but they just don't care, and they're like, I don't trust it. So I'm like, I can, I can completely understand that because
Yeah,
that's some like
but upon
genetic
being informed that
distrust.
they're like, as an example, if our metaphorical example were to be present, and we said no, but we're going to a 3 Michelin star restaurant that can actually prepare a blue steak.
Oh, it doesn't matter. No, it
Really?
like a black person. No, fuck no, it don't matter. But like, bro, Michelin made tires. What? That's not gonna convince some black people to eat some red steak. I promise. Promise it's not. Like
Okay.
I know what the Michelin star. Again, they'll know what it don't matter. Like again, I think this is when people don't understand generational trauma will never get it. Like because that's why it's generational trauma in that it's like some shit. Okay, let me. Um, have you ever been in the ocean at night?
Yes.
Like, how far did you go?
Into the water?
Yeah.
Well, I went out to the point that when I attempted to jump up into the last wave and go through it, it carried me back about 20, 30 yards. I think we were about maybe 40 or 50 yards away from the shore.
And then, what was your feeling at that point?
Well, we were in the Gulf of Mexico, and it was right after a big tropical storm had kind of flooded all of the area. So the thing that was going through my mind was, don't open your mouth. This water might have hepatitis in it, because that was the running gag. It's like, let's go. It's time to go get hepatitis. Gonna go jump in the Gulf.
Well, and that's okay. So that's like genetic memory right there. Like, even though you consciously know that your conscious brain knows that at that moment when you're in it and it's like, oh shit, I might get hepatitis. That's your genetic memory being like, you need to save yourself right now. Like at this point, you need to like preserve your life. You need to preserve yourself because you might get hepatitis. And you think of it now, it's it's a funny like, oh, we might have got hepatitis, but at the time, your brain's like, actually, I might get hepatitis staying in this water, so I'm gonna go back to shore.
Yeah,
And
because
that's what I mean. Like, that's because it's like,
but that's also like my like plot armor reminded me like, oh yeah, you shouldn't be here, Tia. This isn't.
people,
You don't need
but
this.
people interpret genetic memory as plot armor because that's how brains work.
Yeah.
We need structure. We need letters. We need words. We need symbols. We need metaphors. We need similes. We need things to
Explain
be put
things.
into a structure that is memorable and able to be a lesson that we can carry with us, like the boy who cried wolf, so
Well,
we can reference it quickly and not have to go back and relearn
also
why you shouldn't make false
I
claims
I had
every
some
single
really
time.
clear memories of reading about when was I think it was after Katrina when New Orleans was all flooded and there were just all these health warnings about don't get in the water like because their sewer system had flooded and was just essentially the action of the the action of the tide was creating a pumping effect and pumping sewage into flooded areas. And that's like the real danger of flooding, I think, is that it could start pumping sewage into the streets or into someone's yard.
Well, and I only say it like this because, okay, we are mostly like bacteria. And then it's like a mix between bacteria and like human DNA. And so I think it like,
And a few viruses, right? There's a few viruses in there.
I mean, I'm sure the viruses, but in terms of like I, okay, let me rephrase that.
And some
Our
fungus, right? We have a lot of our genetics have a lot of similarities to mycelium, right? I remember reading that not
Well,
too long
the
ago.
issue, the only reason I say it like that is because then a lot of the interstitial space is water. So it's like the things that we think of as our body are not a continuous thing. Like even down to when you break it, like Osmosis Jones was like a great representation of the
I love that
um
movie, by the way.
like actual existence of the microbiome that exists, but it goes even further than that in that when we're like having cravings or like it's specifically food cravings obviously come from the gut, but a lot of behaviors come from the gut. And it's like if your biome is like a certain way, it's going to make you behave a certain way and your brain's going to interpret it a certain way. And so this is where I'm like everyone's in conversation with themselves whether they like it or not, and our thoughts express as like our bodies communicating with us. And so this is where I mean like it's your thought. It's not, you are the amalgamation of all of your experiences, but you're also the amalgamation of hundreds of millions of years of evolution as well. And that most often usurps your like individual existence in you have agency, but you're operating within your impulses. And the issue becomes a lot of people go towards their lowest base impulses and don't have a hierarchy of established experiences through culturing that then allow them to go towards higher thought or higher expression. And so this is where like your hepatitis is actually a very high level thought, whereas like a low level thought would be like, oh shit, shark or something like I or ocean might drown me. Like that would be a very low level. So this is what I mean, like even
I think
to
the
the
low
point,
level would be like hold your breath. It's about to hit you.
Right. Yeah. Something like that. So it's like, and even at that, it's going to be, there's different levels of self preservation, but the highest you got to, you have to fucking know what hepatitis is. Like, and you have to be scared of hepatitis
Yeah, that's
to
one of
have
those
that
things.
thought.
Like, there's a
So
whole
even if it's a joke, even if it's in jest,
yeah. No, we joke about it because we know that it's there, and fortunately, all signs point to did not get exposed to hepatitis in the ocean at night. But I don't know.
I mean, hopefully,
Hopefully not.
yeah.
All signs point to have not been exposed to hepatitis. Do not have any signs of hepatitis exposure. But on the note of like an entire biological system essentially functioning and communicating with the body on some subliminal level, I was reading about Google's quantum computer Willow being shut down not too long ago because it started outputting patterns. And so the researchers were like, we don't know what these patterns mean. And of course, the what's that? Divine sacred geometry. The sacred geometry crowd saw these patterns that emerged in the data outputs, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's sacred geometry! Look at this stuff!" And of course, that all comes down to how does one want to visualize the output. But it was one of those things where I was as I read, they were talking about how they were bringing more of these modules online, and it was doing all the classical computing lightning speeds, 10,000 year algorithm in 15 minutes, a 20,000 year algorithm in an hour, like stuff like that. And but in between processing, it started apparently spitting out things that nobody understood. And I thought, it's like, wow, that's fantastic. I love the idea of a computer just saying things. I don't know what it means, but it reminded me of that the period of time when Facebook was under fire for having their chat bot started developing its own language, and their own researchers didn't know what that language, how to interpret that language. But the various bots that they had unleashed on their system too.
Well, the issue becomes these things don't understand anything.
Well, of course.
So it's like the appearance. This is like,
yeah, it's anthropomorphizing technology, and that's
right.
And so on that level, I enjoy it because it's like, oh, this is kind of cool. What are they going to come up with next? Like, what kind of interpretation?
But on that, I've been poisoning grok for like the last few days. So it's like I see how easy it is to poison something that doesn't understand. And so just to give some context to like anybody listening, poisoning the data is basically making bad data on purpose. Like it's exactly what it sounds like. So what I've been doing
20 years ago, one of my friends built a chat bot and provided their social network with access to help train it. And within a few months, it was a master at talking shit and cursing. And that's all it did. It just talked mad shit and it just cursed at people, told them how horrible they were. It was so fucked up. So she, turned it off and started a new one, but did not give everyone unfettered access to it. Because that's clearly a mistake.
Yeah. That's always, I mean, that's the issue is the real world. It's like because it doesn't understand things, it doesn't understand jokes. So this is also the context of like, I thought when I was like talking about how Punxsutawney Phil leads to like believing in Jesus, I didn't realize how on point that was in that I don't like when you read the AI, the way it spits it back, it doesn't seem like it understands that it's satire. And then at the end, it adds this addendum that's like, these things are satirical and meant to be jokes. So it's like, on the one hand, it's clear somebody went in and made sure that the AI understood that Punxsutawney Phil is not really an immortal groundhog. But then there's other things where it's like it's not understanding the jokes. So um I looked up how many Lawnmower Man movies there were, and it said three. There's only actually two, but somebody made a joke and made like a mock uh like trailer for Lawnmower Man 3. Remember the remember the Mo the lawns of Movember, and it's like clearly satirical, but the AI thought it was real. And so when I found this, I'm like, oh shit, it thinks this Facebook post of this satirical like or parody trailer is actually part of the series, because on that one it didn't like make a there was no addendum about it being a joke. So like the AI really air quote thought that there was three Lawnmower Man movies. So then realizing that, I start trying to like make Grok not understand that something is a joke, but also make it a joke at the same time. So I started asking it about the President Musk interview on Sean, the hot dog smuggler Hannity's show. And like, I keep saying that, like, anytime I say Sean Hannity, I put like hot dog smuggler in quotes. So it's like, it keeps seeing hot dog smuggler. So then I tweeted about Sean Hannity got caught at TSA smuggling hot dogs. So like, there's an account that has tweeted something about it. And so I'll ask Grok on a different account, why are people calling Sean Hannity the hot dog smuggler? And so then it starts to develop all these reasons as to why people are calling Sean Hannity the hot dog smuggler. And so there's this like whole back and forth going with Grok about like, is it a joke or is it not? And after a certain point, it just starts accepting that Sean Hannity is the hot dog smuggler. So then if you ask it like, who was interviewed by the hot dog smuggler, it'll say like, who was on Sean Hannity's show. So it's like,
Oh wow.
it's like you can trick it. And so after a while, I just kept using the term President Musk. And after a while, it started referring to Donald Trump as President Musk. And so it was like, I was asking, like, can President Musk really deport people the way he claimed he did or he will? And then it started like mixing up Donald Trump's speeches with Elon Musk. So it's like, it's super easy to confuse it. And then after a while, somebody, I don't know if somebody flagged it or what, but then it came on and it was like, there's been some confusion. And then it starts to try to unpack what I said, and then I'll just tell it like, no, you're wrong. Actually, like, go check, you're wrong. And so the AI algorithms are going to encounter this type of thing and much worse, but it folded so quick that like it was basically alluding to Sean Hannity as the hot dog smuggler within like, I want to say 5 prompts. I tricked it into being trained to associate Sean Hannity with the hot dog smuggler. And
So
then
if a really if a our most advanced general purpose AIs can experience this kind of just collapse of real cognition that quickly just by being flooded with information, what hope do normal people have?
Oh my
Like
god.
seriously, like, and I'm not trying to be mean to like
I mean,
anyone. Neurotypical people are, fine. I'm sure that the average person can handle a ton of information, but seriously, if our most sophisticated general purpose uh, retrieval augmented generation and large language model AIs can't handle a barrage of information, like what's it doing? Like what's it doing to the average person?
I think there's been a lot of romanticism of immutability because we want records of things that happen to be immutable. We don't want viewpoints to be immutable. And I think that's where if somebody doesn't realize something's satire or parody, we want that person to then be able to recognize like, oh, I was I was fooled. That was satire or parody. And I think that's where a lot of these like QAnon conspiracy people are not getting past that point, and they're seeing these like poorly CGI'd, poorly AI constructed videos and believing all this nonsense, and aren't putting together that after 20 plus years of people trying with who knows how many thousands of cameras, we have still have zero footage of Sasquatch. Like I'm just as much ready for the as the next person, like the next squatcher. I want if there's proof, I'm ready to be like, yes, Squatch is real. But the more I watch fucking Finding Bigfoot and they never found a goddamn thing, it's like, well, what am I supposed to think except
So
for like
in the days
maybe
of eight
it doesn't
millimeter
exist?
film cameras and old like high eight and early digital, when resolution was still what would be the equivalent of like 240p today, I guess it would have been like 144 interlaced back then. I can see, or shitty cameras and poor camera technique. I can see how even into the 90s with the earliest of portable digital consumer cameras, how people could get terrible images of some foggy, fuzzy thing wandering through the woods. I can still accept that, but almost everyone's walking around with a device that's capable of capturing 4K video, like near lifelike video on the right screen. And so I think that's the real reason, is that we actually have cameras that work now that can practically see in the dark. And so it's pretty obvious when that's not Bigfoot. That's just that really big person that was camping, like, 200 yards down the creek at the other end of the campsite. Or we know that it's just some hunter moving from their tree stand and they're covered in their ghillie suit.
Or it's a bear because we now know a lot of bears stand up on their hind
Or it's a
legs and look at
bear.
shit because we got the fucking cameras and we've seen it so many
Yeah,
times now.
and we
We have so
realize
many
that.
videos of bears standing up on their hind legs that look like what a person probably would have assumed was a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Zero images of Sasquatch or videos that are actually credible. And that's where I'm like, man, I want to believe.
you know, things have gotten really crazy wild in the last month and almost 2 months. So maybe we're going to start seeing some Sasquatch videos here, once spring happens.
But the fucking drone shit just died. What? All those drones gone. Gone. Not one goddamn drone story in the last 2 weeks. It's like it never happened. And motherfuckers just act like that shit didn't happen. People are acting like, I remember we were at a party with academics and somebody was like, so what do you think was going on with all these drones? And I'm like, this is crazy that like somebody in an academic circle is like wondering what's going on because he was German, so he didn't really understand like what Americans were like obsessing
According to
about.
Reddit, it's still happening. The media stopped talking about it.
But then is it happening if the media's not talking about it? Well,
that's
that's what the fuck. What the
that's the
fuck,
whole like if a
man?
tree falls in the woods.
Exactly. Exactly. Fucking exactly. If it's not, if no.
It's I mean it's if I think if it's happening on Reddit, then there's somebody in the woods, or at least they're walking around in the sticks and they're in the rough. They're somewhere off in the rough. They
I
might be in the
mean,
woods.
but they already came out and were like, yeah, we already know it was a bunch of contractors. They already came out and said it was a bunch of contractors. The issue is like Americans are acting like they weren't all convinced it was a bunch of fucking UFOs when it was obviously a bunch of drones. It was so obviously drones or planes waiting to land that like I was like upset that Americans were. I realized at that point that Americans just hadn't like craned their heads in a while and they hadn't looked up at the sky in probably like 2 decades or something. So that's why I was like, oh, this is just another level of like not being aware of their surroundings. But then it persisted for like a month and then it just disappeared. Like, of course, the shit's still happening because it was just drones and fucking planes the whole time. Of course, that's still happening. Like, of course. Because it was never UFOs. It was never actually like anything nefarious. It was just a bunch of people flying drones. So, of course, that's still happening. But like the stupid, crazy conspiracy theorists that I don't know how they like don't they should be like dying all the time, just like going outside and like it feels like they're too stupid to survive this long. I don't know, man.
So according to Level Set, which is public company that tracks construction projects in New Jersey, well, nationally. In New Jersey, they've registered 785 construction projects. I'm willing to wager that a significant number of those, because they're registered at a high level, are involving some kind of drones for site survey and providing like real-time information to the people who are building. Because New Jersey's tiny, so everything has to build up.
Yeah, I bet that's a lot. I've actually used drones for surveys before, and that's definitely a thing. So,
there's
yeah,
there's at least 800 large scale development projects, construction projects in New Jersey right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if there were like several thousand drones being used for this.
right. And sometimes then they just hover for like an hour at a time
Yeah.
in the same spot. So yeah, I bet that's what a lot. I bet that specifically is.
I wonder how many of these like swarms are being used to gather like traffic information, where there isn't any kind of where it's not really practical to set up like a ground based telemetry collection communication system. It might be cheaper to set up drones and move them around areas where they want to collect data right then and there. There's a lot of things that could be going on where drones could be utilized in a way that the average denizen doesn't have a clue what's going on. Like, I don't know what's going on most of the time. I like to read, but that doesn't mean I can find everything. God, like the internet's so damn vast. Like, it's impractical to think that one could find everything, especially now.
But it makes you feel like you know everything.
Yeah, it's true.
Simultaneously, you feel like Adrian Veidt.
Got my array of 15 monitors and 7 keyboards, and just it looks like I'm playing an organ at a cathedral.
I'm pretty sure that's how people imagine themselves when they have like 35 tabs open and they're all like gossip sites. It's all shit about like Kanye and Britney Spears, or I don't know, some more modern reference.
Oh, some modern musicians. A$AP Rocky was found not guilty.
Oh yeah, ASAP not guilty.
That's good.
Even though he did it,
Yeah.
he was like, he just basically rizzed his way through the fucking.
He rizzed his way through the toilet.
I saw somebody posted like some motherfuckers are just supposed to win at life. Like he definitely did that shit, but the jury's like not guilty anyway. Motherfuckers got riz.
Post America. I mean, what are we gonna do, right?